My wife and her best friend accused me of having an affair, then got angry when I didn't have one. I, 31-year-old male, and my wife, 29-year-old female, had a baby last December. It was a traumatic birth, and my wife developed postpartum depression. While she was originally going to go back to work after the birth, she's been struggling enough that we decided to wait until our daughter was a year old and reassess. She has been going to therapy weekly. With my wife home full-time, I've had to work increased hours. This is something we discussed prior to making this decision, and she knew this from the start. A few weeks ago, my boss approached me about a project that would require a lot of overtime in a short amount of time. It would both be great financially and for my career. I talked to my wife about it and she agreed that I should say yes to my boss. For the 4 weeks I'd be working on this, my mother-in-law and her best friend, Jessie, 29-year-old female, would come help out with some of the duties that I typically do. Jessie is a stay-at-home mom with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. She began coming over during the day and would watch the kids with my wife. 3 weeks into the project, it became clear that we'd need a few more weeks to get it together. I went home that night and talked to my wife about it. She said she was okay with it, but got very cold in the days after. It wasn't unusual behavior over the past few months. So I didn't think much about it and tried not to take it personally. During the last week of the project, I got home one night and saw that Jessie was still at the house. I didn't think much about it, said hi to her and my wife, and then went to go check on our daughter. Before I could get to her room, I heard Jessie say something along the lines of, "He doesn't even stop to greet you." Definitely a sign. I turned around and asked what it was a sign of. Immediately, my wife started crying and Jessie started accusing me of having an affair. She told me that I must hate my wife because she has PPD. And I'm not attracted to her because she gained weight from the pregnancy. Neither of these things are true. I'm trying my best to help my wife through her PPD while supporting our family. And I think she looks great how she is right now. She just hasn't wanted to have sex and I haven't pushed. Jessie then demanded to see my phone. I told her no. She told me that's a sign that I'm guilty. I told my wife that I would let her see my phone if she wanted to. She nodded and something inside me broke. I guess it was the thought that she actually believed I was having an affair really got to me, and that she didn't trust me after everything we've been through. Well, she looked through the phone and there was no evidence. Jessie started saying that I deleted the evidence. She started screaming and woke up our daughter, so I told her to get out of the house. Eventually, she left and I went to calm our daughter since my wife was still on the couch crying. When my daughter was asleep again, I sat down by my wife and tried to talk to her about what's been happening. She told me that she's been worried ever since I started working all the overtime. I told her that we'd talked about how good of an opportunity it was and she agreed to letting me take on this project. She said it was very suspicious to increase the length of the project. I told her that sometimes that happens. She wanted more evidence, so I showed her messages and emails with timestamps from work and pay stubs showing the overtime. She said she believed me and was sorry for doubting me. It was just that Jessie had been telling her that these were all signs that I was cheating. I asked her why she believed Jessie more than me and why she didn't come to me with her concerns. She didn't have a real answer. It's been a couple weeks and the project is over. I actually scaled back and am trying to work a little less than I was before the project so I can spend more time with my wife and daughter. But I feel so burnt out trying to do everything and becoming resentful because in the back of my mind, I know that my wife doesn't trust me. I ask myself, what happens the next time I have a project? Or I have to run errands one day? Or if I have a business trip? Am I going to come back every time to accusations that I'm cheating? I've tried bringing it up a couple times, but my wife tells me it's not the time and that she's tired or sad. I try to be mindful of her feelings, but I wonder if that means that I can never have any of my own. I'm not sure what to do here. Any advice for how I can move forward? Update 1. Thank you to everyone for all of the advice and support on my previous post. I think a lot of you pointed out what should have been obvious, that I need to get a therapist and start looking after my own mental health. A couple people asked for an update, so I'm giving one, but it's not happy. That night I approached my wife and told her that I was going to find a therapist. I didn't connect it to her accusations or anything. Just said that I was having a tough time and needed therapy. She shrugged and told me to do whatever. Next day, I got home from work and our room and my home office were ripped apart. Things everywhere. Important papers scattered. I don't see her, but our daughter's in her room crying. My wife left her alone. Her cell phone's off. I call my in-laws and a few friends, but no one's seen her. I'm starting to get worried and I call my mom to see if she can babysit while I go out and look for her. Before my mom can get home, my wife gets back. Jessie's driving. Jessie doesn't come in, but my wife does. She's clearly upset. Been crying. I ask what happened. I thought at first the house might have been robbed. She starts screaming at me that I'm being unfaithful and that the therapy is a front so I can meet my mistress. I try to calm her down and tell her that's not true, but she came at me and she hit me. My nose is broken. She kind of realized what she did and sat down on the couch and went comatose, just stared at the wall. I went into my daughter's room and locked the door. Called my mom to tell her what happened and my mother-in-law to ask her to come over and take care of my wife. I packed a bag for my daughter, and when my mom got there, we left. My wife didn't even look up. We dropped my daughter off with my dad and then went to urgent care for my nose. I got blood all over my mom's new Subaru. My daughter and I are staying with my parents for a while and my wife's staying with hers. I am looking into getting a restraining order against Jessie. My wife and I are separating. I love her, but I won't live with someone who hurts me and who could potentially hurt our daughter. I am not going forward with a divorce yet, with the hopes that my wife will get the treatment she needs and we can work things out. My in-laws told me that they're looking at inpatient treatment at a local hospital. But I also have everything well documented in case of an eventual custody battle. My heart's broken because I know this isn't my wife. This is a sickness in her mind. But I need to keep myself and our daughter safe and give her the space to recover. I'm hoping that this is the right decision. Thanks again, everyone. Edit. Thank you all for your feedback. I've talked to my parents after reading your comments and came to the conclusion that for my daughter's protection, I need to file a police report. I am headed to the station now. Update 2. So basically, a woman fed lies to my wife, suffering from postpartum depression that led to a mental breakdown and her death. She now wants to speak at my wife's funeral. Denying her would start trouble, which I'm not sure would be worth it. There's more context for this situation in my post history. My wife passed on early Monday morning. Convinced by her friend Jessie that I was having an affair that I did not have, she had a mental break, which resulted in my taking our infant daughter and staying with my parents for a while. She was with her parents, who planned on taking her to the hospital for inpatient treatment on Monday. On Sunday night, she came to my parents' house and demanded I give her our daughter. Because she had left her alone for several hours the last time she was responsible for her and had gotten physical with me, I refused. I offered to let her come in and spend time with her while my parents and I were present, but she didn't want to come in and wanted to take our daughter with her. She was upset but left eventually. A few hours later, she drove her parents' car into a tree and died. The friend, Jessie, came to see my daughter and me yesterday. After some tears, she told me that she was planning to speak at my wife's funeral. She had already cleared it with my in-laws but was letting me know as a courtesy. I told her she would not be speaking at the funeral. We fought and she left after telling me that I was an asshole and not the only person who loved my wife. I talked to my in-laws who are adamant that Jessie be allowed to speak. She and my wife knew each other since they were kids and my in-laws are close to her. We're all very fragile right now and I fear that pushing this further would hurt my relationship with my in-laws, which I don't want. Still, the thought of seeing Jessie up there at my wife's funeral makes me feel sick. I don't think I can stand to listen to her, knowing that she took joy in my wife's deteriorating mental health and picked up my wife, leaving my daughter home alone. That being said, I don't trust myself to make the best decisions right now. My mind's clouded by grief, guilt, and fear. My parents are split on what to do and I don't have the energy to reach out to my friends. So I'm coming here again to ask for your advice. Thank you. Now let's see what the community has to say. Opinion number 1 says, do your in-laws know what she had said to her? Pause sitting down and having a conversation with them with the logical choice. If they knew that this woman had a hand in causing your wife's death, I sincerely doubt they would want her even at the funeral, let alone speak at it. As a matter of fact, make sure as many people as possible know what she said and caused. She preyed on her friend at her most vulnerable time. I'm not even sure how she can look in the mirror knowing she was behind this. Opinion number 2 says, my concern is that if Jessie is given a platform to speak at the funeral, she will try to shift the blame for your wife's death onto you. She will call you the bastard that took his wife's reason to live. Giving someone manipulative a platform to be heard is one of the worst things you can do. My concern is that if you don't put a hard boundary here now, you will have this woman haunting your life and stalking your child for years. You need to have a conversation with your in-laws. Air every single detail. Contact a lawyer to see if an order of protection can be granted to you and your child so that Jessie cannot be allowed to see either of you. If you don't do it now, one day, she could try and steal your child and your in-laws might try to help her. Opinion number 3 says, you're not wrong. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Your wife was incredibly vulnerable and someone who has known her since childhood knew exactly what buttons to push and did. Now your child is motherless. Whether or not she intended for your wife to spiral the way she did, she has to live with the consequences. Just like your wife is ultimately responsible for her actions, vulnerability or not, Jessie is culpable for your wife's death, whether or not she's grieving or going through something of her own. Are your in-laws aware of the full extent of Jessie's involvement? Is having your own memorial for your wife possible? If they are insistent that Jessie shows, have your own and remember your wife the way you feel is best. Yes, Jessie is grieving the loss of a friend as well. PPD can make someone into the complete opposite of who they are. Jessie took advantage of that and did not support her friend in a productive manner or encourage her to seek the care she needs. Whether or not your daughter goes is a whole other thing, and while you and your in-laws helping support one another through the grieving process is preferable, this is a hard line. Edit. Jessie was capable of communicating things to your wife alone in the beginning. It's how y'all got here. She can communicate, alone, to your wife after the end. How about you guys? What do you guys think about this whole situation, and what would your advice be for OP? Let's all discuss in the comments section below. I got pregnant from a one-night stand, and now he's pressuring me to terminate the pregnancy, but I don't want to. What can I do? I'm a 26-year-old woman, and I work in an office. I've never had a boyfriend before. A couple of months ago, a man, he's 24 years old, also started working here. He was pretty cute, and he was also very nice to me as well. After a while of working together, I started to feel more and more strongly toward him. I came to the realization that I'm in love with him. I honestly felt like I was in high school again. Anyway, me and him started to hang out after work with a group of friends from work. During one of our outings, he mentioned something about him being single to us. At that moment, I decided it would be the best move to pursue him. So, I asked one of my friends to keep the group we usually hang out with to stay away from tonight. That way, it would just be me and him. So, that Friday, I went to the bar we always went to. After a few minutes of waiting, he showed up. It was just me and him, alone. We talked for a couple of hours, and after a few beers, I got the courage to make a move. I don't remember what happened, we were both pretty hammered. But I remember we were kissing rather heavily. I think I tried to kiss him first, but I can't remember. I told him we could go to my house, which is just down the street, not a far walk at all. When we got home, I led him straight to my bedroom and we continued what happened in the bar. We were intimate that night. I didn't intend to go that fast with him, but alcohol makes people do crazy things. I know it was a mistake. We didn't talk about our intentions or anything. We just jumped into bed. That morning, I woke up feeling very warm in my heart. I truly was in love with him. I lay there, contemplating, and I was very excited. I honestly thought we'd be a couple. I thought I found a man I truly wished to marry. After a few minutes, he woke up, and as soon as he did, he got out of bed and started putting his clothes on. I called out to him, and he looked back at me. His face was completely red. I told him I love you. He didn't say anything, just looked away and tried to dress faster. I thought he didn't hear me, so I repeated, "Didn't you hear me? I said you love you." He didn't say anything. Instead, he quickly walked out my bedroom door, not running but moving briskly. I quickly threw on a robe and followed him. I called out his name and he stopped and turned to me. He just stuttered. He couldn't get anything out. He then said my name, and what he said next broke my heart. "Look, I'm just not looking for a relationship right now. I don't even know why I did that last night. You just started kissing me and I couldn't control myself." Needless to say, I was devastated. I started crying and he tried to console me. I just shoved him away and he started walking away to the door. I was so emotional that I tried to throw a shoe at him. It's been a couple of weeks since then. We haven't hung out. He hasn't spoken to me at all. I still feel strongly for him, but he just used me for sex. What should I do? Update. If you don't remember, I had a co-worker who I had very strong feelings for. But we kind of rushed things. We were drunk and had a bit of a one-night stand. I confessed that morning, and he had a very strong reaction. He ran off and abandoned me, and afterward, he cut off all contact. He just used me for sex. I was pretty pissed, but I did get over it. However, after a while, I had been feeling sick. I went to my doctor and discovered I was pregnant. That man is the only person I have ever slept with. I had struggled with the thought, should I tell him or not? I decided not to. I was scared too because he had cut off all contact. I kept quiet, out of fear mostly. That, and I also kept my mouth shut because he had gotten a girlfriend who also works with us. But my belly started growing and rumors started circulating. Everyone in the office knew I didn't have a boyfriend. Me and him both kept quiet about the one-night stand. However, my manager had asked me who the father was and if I had gotten married or something. I just started crying, and he sat me down in his office and calmed me. I told him it was the guy. I tried to tell him, but he didn't want to listen to me. He called me a psycho and threatened to report me to the HR department if I didn't leave him alone. I had become depressed and told everyone at work what a selfish piece of crap he was. So, things went on a downward spiral for him. He's been completely ostracized in the office, no one wants to talk to him, and his girlfriend dumped him. I think he finally got his dues paid. Karma came back and bit him in the keister. So, lo and behold, I actually got a text from him. He said he wanted to talk about it, so I stopped by his house. We got into an argument because I told him he needed to man up, but he told me he hated me and to get out of his life. He shouted at me, "Why'd you have to get pregnant?" Like it was my fault. He's the one who used me for his own benefit. He's been blaming me for his girlfriend dumping him. Oh, and he sent me a text saying that he knows of a place, a good hospital. I asked him what he was getting at. He told me it would help get rid of our problem. He said he would pay for me to get rid of the baby growing inside me, and I told him no. So, he flat out told me he wasn't going to help me raise the child at all. He is constantly asking me after work and during breaks to terminate it. But I don't wish to. I want to have this baby. I'm against abortion, and I want him to man up and help me raise a child that he helped my father. What can I do? TL, doctor had one night stand with co-worker, got pregnant, and he abandoned me. I told my friends, and now nobody wants anything to do with him. Now, co-worker blames me for what happened and is pressuring me to have an abortion. Now let's see what the community has to say. Opinion number 1 says, your first post was made 5 months ago about something that happened a couple of months before that, which would make you at least 7 months pregnant. How can he still be pressuring you for an abortion when that's blatantly illegal at this point? If he really is that ignorant of how things work and refuses to take no for an answer, why haven't you gone back to HR about the harassment? And perhaps most importantly of all, why do you expect someone this determined to avoid being a father to magically turn around and serve as a positive influence in your child's life? Assuming this is for real, shut down the pressure once and for all, and then focus on how you're going to make this work as a single parent, because anything that involves him cooperating with you is pure wishful thinking. Opinion number 2 says, you didn't rush things because you never had anything with him. He's acting like a dick, but you're, and I say this in the most objective way possible, a complete lunatic. You got drunk and had a one-night stand. You didn't use protection, and biology happened. I believe that you're entitled to do what you want with your body, but he's not going to magically fall in love with you when you have this kid. What can you do? Start preparing to be a single mom, because it sounds like you've been focused on how to snare this guy for the entire time you've been pregnant. It will not happen. You have a few months left before you are the sole caretaker of a human being. Start prepping, because it will not be easy. Good luck. Opinion number 3 says, get it through your head, he didn't use you. You just like to say that because you're bitter about unreciprocated feelings of love. You used him, if anything. You both got drunk. You brought up the idea to go back to your place. You had sex without disclosing whether or not you were on birth control. You woke up with insane grandiose fantasies of an idealized future with him. And when he didn't reciprocate that back to you, you began a slanderous campaign about how he's selfish and used you for sex. You ought to be disgusted with yourself. You very well knew what you were doing from the beginning. You seriously sound like Glenn Close from Fatal Attraction. Do this man a favor and raise this child by yourself, far away from him, and never ask for anything from him. You've already done a number. How about you guys? What do you guys think about this whole situation, and what would your advice be for OP? Let's all discuss in the comments section below.